Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed citizens of our community and distinguished guests, welcome to the CDA TV Candidate Forum hosted by the Coeur Group. My name is Justin Shoresman, your moderator for this evening. Presenting our questions tonight is Shane Greenfield, president of the Coeur Group, and Coeur Group board member Josh Sattler. Our goal tonight is to foster a constructive and informative discussion among our candidates as they share their visions for our beloved city and our community's future. We encourage respectful discourse and aim to provide you, our audience, with valuable insights into the candidate's position on key issues. Without further ado, let's go over the rules and then we'll begin our forum this evening. The order of the session will be as followed. Each session will be 20 minutes. Candidates, that will be 20 minutes. We'll have Council Seat 1, followed by Council Seat 3, and Council Seat 5. We'll then move on to our school board, trustees in Zone 2 for District 271, and trustee for Zone 3 in School District 271. Candidates may bring prepared notes and may not have any props on display on stage. That includes our audience. Cell phones, iPads, and laptops have all been taken from all candidates. They will not be allowed on stage. Each candidate will have 1 minute for our opening statement. The opening statements are going to be picked at random, and each candidate will have 30 seconds for a closing statement. Each candidate will be given a chance to answer each one of our questions tonight. They will have 90 seconds to do so. We have a fixed number of questions for this evening, and each candidate will be asked the same questions. Moderator, myself will be responsible for general order. We ask that the audience follows these rules. Please do not be disruptive. Disruptive conduct will not be tolerated. And disruptive conduct includes, without limitation, chanting, heckling, or gesturing with hands or any body parts toward our candidates, panelists, or audience members. Please, no shouting or interruption while a candidate or panelist or audience member is speaking. And please do not leave the auditorium during our forum. Any disruptive conduct will be handled first as a warning, and the second, we will pause for a recess to remove any disruptive individual. I'm excited for tonight. I'm excited for our candidates. I'm excited for our future of Coeur d'Alene. To start, I'm going to start with Brian Winkler. Brian, please tell us a little about yourself, who you are, and why you are running for this city council position.
Sure. So when I got out of the Marine Corps, I was in the Marine Corps for 4 years. I went to grad school. I started my professional life, and I moved around to different cities. I started in San Francisco. I moved to Omaha, Nebraska, before Seattle, and then I came here. And what I have to say is that I watched the same patterns in all of those cities. You have the crime, you have the high density, and it's the same pattern. And when I left Seattle, it was in the middle of COVID, and you had very strict COVID mandates. You had mask mandates, vaccine mandates to go into restaurants. So I left that place, and I moved to Coeur d'Alene in 2021 after visiting several times. I fell in love with the place, and I got involved with Idaho Speaks podcast, and I interviewed a lot of local and state leaders here. But I fell in love with the place, and what I love about it is just the small town charm and just the laid back culture and the friendly people, and then the respect for individual rights and liberties. And so the reason I'm running is I want to preserve those things. Right? You see the same forces at work here that were at work in those other cities. And I really would like to preserve this place. I'm invested here. I bought my home here, and I want to stay here forever. So that's why I'm running.
Councilwoman Woods.
Thank you. Well, I am an Idaho person. I've been here for decades. I grew up out in Hauser Lake, graduated Lakeland, and then joined the Air Force. After the Air Force, I moved to Coeur d'Alene, and I've raised my son here with my husband. We have a home here. I spent 8 years on the Coeur d'Alene School Board, 18 years on the North Idaho College Board of Trustees. I'm finishing up my 4th year with the City of Coeur d'Alene as a council member. And I'm just deeply invested in this community. I've served on a number of committees. I've been on the Park and Rec Commission since 2016. I really know the pulse of this community. I know the people that spent decades making it the beautiful city it is. And I'm not the least bit concerned that it's going to turn into Seattle or San Diego or any of those, because we work hard to make sure it doesn't. We love this city. I love this city, and we put our resources where they matter. And if I'm elected to council again, I'm going to work just as hard as I did the last 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'll hand off to our panelists.
Okay, thank you for both being here tonight. First question, and Councilwoman Wood, we'll start with you first. Coeur d'Alene is filled with people with different backgrounds and political views. Coeur d'Alene's diversity is likely to grow as its population does. How will you work with those of differing views to assure them the decisions you are making are in the best interest of everyone?
Well, thank you. I work with a number of different groups already, and with a lot of different political backgrounds. And so the role of council is to make sure that you have clean water, great drivable streets, beautiful parks, that the services are in place that you need them, that we fully fund police and fire and have a safe city. That's what I focus on. I try not to get into the political ideology. Obviously, it's here. I feel like there's a great force here that really wants to turn the city in a direction of a little bit of chaos, because we've watched some of that already with the library trustees and certainly with my beloved North Idaho College. So it is a concern of mine that political ideology would become the forefront of the city of Coeur d'Alene. I don't want to see that. I'll work and talk with anybody as long as they're not people that support violence. There are certain groups that I just won't talk to, and part of that is my background being the president of the Kootenai County Task Force on Human Relations. You know, we really try to embody the work of Dr. King, and Dr. King never met or ever went to a Klan rally. So that kind of ideology I won't have any part of, but I will definitely work with many different groups and listen to them and do my best to represent them in a very neutral way.
That's what I'd say about diversity. I'm a big proponent of diversity of thought and diversity of experience. And you really have to have respect for that when you go through the military and the Marine Corps. I mean, you're sleeping in the mud with people, sleeping in the barracks, and you're showering with all sorts of different people. And, that's just how it is. So you get accustomed to that. And when it comes to local politics, I think what we're seeing in this country right now is, in the past, we're conditioned to, turning on the news. We either belong to one tribe or the other, right? We focus on the national news. We focus on Fox News or CNN, and we have these tribes that we belong to. I'm Republican, I'm Democrat, whatever. But at the local level, what I've found when starting to look at these issues and start to talk to people is that local issues are very nonpartisan, I would say. And I've knocked thousands of doors. My team has knocked a lot of doors in this campaign, and we've talked to a lot of people. And most people have the same concerns. They're concerned about what's going on in the nation with the wars overseas. They're concerned about density. They're concerned about growth. And so I look at politics at the local level as very nonpartisan, and I'm willing to work with anyone to do what's right for the community.
Perfect. Thank you. Brian, this one will be for you. While this election is supposed to be non-political, and as you just mentioned, you want to try to stay nonpartisan in this, we have seen political parties advocate for certain candidates. Do you feel this is a coming normalcy in election processes? Do you feel it's advantageous to it?
Yeah, so the Republican Party, I'm endorsed by the Kootenai County Republican Party, and I'm proud to have that endorsement. And my values align with the platform of the Republican Party. It's to promote fiscally and socially conservative candidates, and I agree with that. So, and I believe that the Republican Party, they have the freedom of speech and they can weigh in, and I'm proud to have that endorsement. But nonetheless, I still look at the issues from a nonpartisan lens. I try to look at them from a lens of common sense and bring my experience to that. I do believe that the party should have the right to weigh in if they choose to do that.
Councilwoman?
Thank you. I'm endorsed by firefighters and police officers, and a number of other organizations. I would not look for a political party endorsement. I certainly wasn't offered one, but I don't like certainly what's happening with our local GOP Central Committee. I think, I've been here a long time, and I've worked with a lot of people that used to be in that Central Committee, and the tone has changed drastically. And so I don't feel that I could ever be aligned. It feels like if you accept their endorsement, you have decided that you're going to be obedient. One only look at their other party or their other organization, the Idaho Freedom Foundation, that they give scorecards to legislators, and legislators don't even do their homework. They just show up in session, and when the bill comes before them, they just mark the box that's been chosen for them. I'm just not willing to do that. I'm not willing to even seek an endorsement like that. Our job is to show up and do the work, and the work doesn't involve the Republican Party platform. It involves making sure that you have adequate police and fire services, great drinking water, great parks. That's what I'm here to do, and I'll keep doing it.
Okay, next question. Again, Councilwoman Woods, this is for you again to start. Population growth can bring both opportunities and challenges, and obviously we're experiencing that here. What is the biggest opportunity population growth provides, and how can the city capitalize on it? What is the biggest challenge, and how can the city overcome it?
Thank you. I think the biggest opportunity is just that talent that could come to this area. I will give my opponent his kudos that his background in the technical industry, that's great stuff to bring forward. I think we have an opportunity with our new health district to really bring in some great high-paying jobs. That's a great thing for a city. We should always be focused on economic development. Some of the challenges are that we don't have those incredible high-paying jobs at the moment. We have some, not it's and so it's become unaffordable for the people that work for us, our city employees, our school teachers, our nurses. It's unaffordable, and so we're dealing with that issue of growth in that regard.
Mr. Winkler?
Yeah, as far as population growth is concerned, what I'd say is I think we're approaching it, when you look at the Coeur d'Alene CDA 2030 and the comprehensive plan, they're saying they're going to double the population by 2040. I don't think we need to be that aggressive, and I don't think we should be planning for that. But I do think there are opportunities that come with population growth. What I'd really like to see, we hear a lot about affordable housing and the supply side. We need to add more supply of housing and high density so that people can move in and afford that. But if you look at the comprehensive plan, there's one aspect of it that I don't think gets enough attention and enough discussion, and that is the supply side of it. The comprehensive plan lays very clearly that we want to bring supply chains into the area, and we want to have, it talks about two different types of jobs. You have the trades, and then you have retail and tourism. And we've become very dependent on the latter, the retail and the tourism. But it talks about how the trades, those are higher value jobs. Those they pay better. And I think we should be focusing more on that. So when you see population coming in, I think we need to think about not just where they're going to live, but where they're going to work. How does it affect our infrastructure? But most importantly, where they're going to work. And I think that when looking at the comprehensive plan, we should put more emphasis on, what kind of high value industry can we bring to the area. And also when you look at what's going on in the world, when you look at the wars and this what some would describe as the collapse of globalization and the failure of global supply chains. I would say that we really need to focus on that aspect in terms of growth and high value jobs in the area.
Thank you, Mr. Winkler. Moving on, this question will be for you to start with. What is your position on the current short-term rental code? Do you feel that in its current state it's too restrictive or not restrictive enough? It's been brought before the council a couple times. It's been pushed back. What are your thoughts?
The short-term rental code, so like short-term rentals for vacation homes?
Correct.
So I would not want to deny. I believe in property rights, and I believe that people should be free to enjoy their property. And a lot of people have ADUs, and they have, they rent out their home, and that's supplemental income for people. And I believe that individuals should be allowed to do that. What I don't agree with, and I think we need to be very vigilant in this regard, is I think we need to be careful about letting corporations and corporate capital come in, buy up individual homes, and then rent those out short term. I don't think we should be allowing that. But I do think that if someone is relying on supplemental income from a short term vacation rental, then yes, they should be allowed to do that.
Thank you, sir. Councilwoman?
Thank you. Council is studying the short-term rental issue, as you well know, and I expect for some data to come back to us probably within the next 3 to 4 months, and then we'll really be in a position of deciding which way we're going to go. Are we going to restrict short-term rentals, or are we not at all? Is it going to be a free-for-all, or are we going to have some kind of caps on it? I listened to all the people that came to the council meeting with their stories of how this is extra income for them. Some of them have invested a lot of money, and they live right here in town. I'd like to protect their interest. I really would. But I've also listened to the people that talk about the constant noise in their neighborhood, the cars, the boats, the garbage that are out on the street in front of where they live. And that's a concern too. So whatever we do, we have to find the right balance. I think we can. I don't think we should be heavy-handed, and I don't think we should do nothing. So what we need to do in the council is take that data and try to make the best decision we can from it. But I do expect there'll be some changes.
I do have a follow-up with that, and I'll start with you, Councilman Woods. Do you feel that the short-term rental market is affecting the affordability of the rental market for our citizens?
I've been told that a lot, and that's why we asked for real data so that we could get a real answer to that. That if we were just to shut down the short-term rentals, then we could free up a lot of older homes for people to actually buy. I believe in private property rights too. I'm not sure that is the avenue that I would want to see us go. And it's hard to say without the data whether that's true or not. I also think that the short-term rental market has softened. I just think it has.
Mr. Winkler, you have the same question. Yeah, for affordability, I'd like to see data on it too. But again, kind of in a similar vein of corporate capital coming in and buying up a bunch of places and renting them out, which I'm opposed to. I would also, we'd have to find a way, or we'd have to look at very wealthy individuals coming in and buying up multiple properties, because again, that undermines the character of the place, and it's also the same concept of someone coming in and dominating and just making the place all short-term rentals and also increasing the value or increasing the prices of homes too. So, yeah, I think that's something, once we see the data, that we'd have to take a look at and really make some decisions as to what's right for the community. And, after taking testimony and hearing all different sides and all different use cases.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Woods, we'll start with you again. North Idaho College has been an integral part of the community for generations. We are all aware of the challenges NIC currently faces. Do you feel that NIC is an important asset to our community? And if so, what role do you think the City Council has in its preservation and future?
Thank you. Well, it's an incredibly important asset. I attended North Idaho College back in the 80s, and then again, I finished my bachelor's degree through LCSC while I was working as a police officer. So I went to school at night. Many people in this community have done the same thing for generations at North Idaho College. If we didn't have that college, we would have to travel. Our kids would have to leave town to try to finish their education. It's critical to not only economic development, but just for the access. Anybody can walk through the doors of North Idaho College and try to change their lives. Other universities, they're not just going to let anybody come through the door. It's a lot stricter. So yes, it's critical. How the city can help. We can encourage them Some people might not like the kind of encouragement we do, but we are serious about trying to help that board keep that college open. Encouraging also is accountability, and when you have to hold accountable people, you do. Another thing that we can do, and the city's talked about this, and we've offered it to the college, and we have not heard back yet, is we can protect the college. We can do some university district zoning so that no matter what happens, generations to come, the college could never be developed into condos or what have you. We could actually make it a university district just like they have at U of I. Unfortunately, we haven't heard back from them in any willingness.
So it goes back to what I was talking about earlier. When you look at the comprehensive plan, and you have the trades, and you have the the retail and the tourism jobs. The trades meaning manufacturing, things we can produce and then sell to other communities, and those are higher value jobs. Those are better paying jobs, and I believe that NIC, to sustain that model, is critical, and we have to do everything we can to preserve it and to grow it and to expand it. And I'm very impressed with NIC just because when I get the brochure and you see the type of things that they're teaching, I mean, I compare that to the modern university where they charge you $200,000, and a lot of students come out just Marxist revolutionaries, right? So it's a 360-degree loss. When you look at NIC, these are very practical, real life, valuable skills that they're learning, and it's absolutely something we should preserve. And I don't know why people want to discredit it. I don't know why someone would file for that or go to the accreditation agency and try to do that. But no, I think it's critical, and I think at the city level, it's important that the counselors, as they're working with industry and bringing in high value industry and jobs, that they should also be working with the school so that we can have that pipeline of talent coming out and filling those jobs from people in this community.
Thank you, sir. We're going to move on to our last question here, and we're going to start with Mr. Winkler. Over the years, the Pride in the Park event has caused a fair share of controversy in our community. Do you believe the city should support the LGBTQ community using city space? Why or why not?
So as far as Pride in the Park, I didn't attend that event, but from what I hear about it, you have a grown man dressed like a woman and showing his genitals to little kids. I think that's totally inappropriate. And I don't support that at all. I don't think, if that's the type of behavior, I don't think taxpayer funds should go toward that at all. When you look at the budget, right? We're in the middle of a budget crisis, and the mayor came and stated this, in August at the city council meeting. They were talking about it, and he declared we have an unsustainable budget. But then the next day, you had an Arts Commission meeting in which Emerge, which is I think on 3rd and Lakeside. They were there in front of the Arts Commission asking for money. And then you look at the artwork, some of the artwork that Emerge puts out, and it's very adult, graphic type of art. But they're asking the city for money to teach kids, activist art, progressive art. And if that has anything to do with it, I don't think that's appropriate at all. And I don't think taxpayer funds should be going towards that.
Thank you. Councilwoman?
Thank you. There are no taxpayer funds going to Pride in the Park. When you serve on a city council, you take an oath of office and you follow the rules of the Constitution. And in our office, we are required to be content neutral. We don't decide for people what they can view, what they can't view. We have to be very fair. The city didn't set up Pride in the Park, but we're not going to deny people of their right to have it. As far as any sort of show where maybe somebody showed their genitals, I believe there was a police report filed on that, and that was determined that that actually did not occur. I would agree with my opponent that it's not appropriate, and if there are criminal laws that will deal with that, and if a crime has been committed, then the police will take the appropriate action, and I'm absolutely in favor of that. But that did not happen at this last Pride in the Park. There's been a lot of rumors that it did, but it's absolutely been determined by the prosecutor's office and local law enforcement that it did not occur. So the city council doesn't have a role, again, in determining what you can view, what you can't view. We will always be content neutral.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for both of our candidates and your responses to our questions today. We are going to give each candidate 1 minute for their closing statement. We started as an opening statement with Mr. Winkler. We'll go to Councilwoman Woods.
Thank you. You know, I've said this before, that I know what I expect out of elected officials. I expect honesty and integrity, and I want them to work hard for the citizens they represent. I do that. I love this city. I'm invested in this city. I've spent decades, I've patrolled the streets of this city. I've been involved in numerous committees. I think when you're running for office, you should be invested in the community that you want to represent. And he is a really nice guy. I can tell that already. But he's only been here 17 months, and he's not invested in this community. I think it would be a great thing if he, tried out for some committee representation. It would be great, because I think he does want to work with the city of Coeur d'Alene. But right now, we need experienced leaders, and I am an experienced leader. I have tons of experience with public policy and public budget. And if I'm elected, I will continue to serve with all citizens in mind.
Mr. Winkler.
Yeah, so there's a lot of, I sense a lot of angst in the public, and you can see it at the city council meetings, you can see it at the planning commission meetings, and there's a lot of issues right now. People are concerned that their neighborhoods are going to be transformed and the character is going to be undermined. So people are showing up to meetings and they're testifying against that and making sure it doesn't happen. Then you have the 5G and the smart cities issue. People are worried about the health consequences of 5G. They're worried about the surveillance of smart cities. And so they're showing up to meetings and they're worried about it. People are very concerned. And then you also have the art that, the communist fist was put up, and then there was a public backlash and they had to take it down. Same thing with the hammer and the sickle. So there's all these issues, and people feel like they're having an agenda pushed onto them. And what I can say is I do also have leadership experience. This is my first time running for politics, but I was in the Marine Corps. I was a financial officer in the Marine Corps. I have a lot of leadership experience. I've worked for great companies, and I'm ready to serve this community. And I've been here 24 months. And what you're going to get from me is transparency. I'm going to be direct, and I'm going to be straightforward with you. And I'm going to communicate with what's going on in your city government.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate both of our candidates for seat 1 of the City Council. Thank you for your responses. Thank you for listening to our questions today. And the best of luck to you both at this election.
Thank you.
We'll be taking a recess to bring out our next candidates for seat 3. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the CDA TV Candidate Forum hosted by the Coeur Group. We now have candidates in front of us for Seat 3 on Coeur d'Alene City Council. We have incumbent Dan Gookin, challenged by Clark Albritton. Gentlemen, we are going to have 20 minutes for questions, and we will start with our panelists, Shane Greenfield and Josh Sattler, asking those questions today. Oh, thank you very much, Josh. I also am going to give each candidate opportunity for an opening statement. We will start with incumbent Gookin. Please tell us a little about yourself, who you are, why are you continuing to run for city council, and why are you qualified?
Thank you. Dan Gookin, I am the incumbent, and if you want to find out about me, you can go to my website at dangookin.com. That has all the details. The city is very well run. We plow the streets, we maintain the parks, we have good water pressure. The wastewater treatment plant works. The city delivers quality services to its citizens. I believe city government is responsive to the people. That's one of my roles, is to be responsive to the people. And therefore, we have a good thing going, and I don't think we need to change it. I think the quality of service and everything that we're providing for the citizens is top flight, and that should be continued. That's the message I hear out there. I'm qualified legally because I am a resident and a voter in the city, but I also feel that I answer the emails, I do the job, I am the one who asks the questions. That's why I believe I'm qualified. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Mr. Albritton, same question to you. Please tell us a little about yourself. Why are you here and why are you running?
All right, yes. I'm Clark Albritton. I'm a 24-year resident of Coeur d'Alene. Never run in politics before. 70% of the people in Coeur d'Alene identify as socially conservative, and yet our city council is drifting further into the woke space, and any attempts to run for office as a conservative results with vitriolic responses from all circles, as we saw with the situation at NIC when we got a conservative. The council and other folks that are associated with it seem willing to burn the place down because a conservative arrived. And so I just think the voice of the people is just not being listened to. And so I'm here to help stop that woke freight train and get the city to focus more on what the people want from a perspective of social conservatism.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll start with you, Mr. Albritton, for this question. Coeur d'Alene is filled with people with different backgrounds and political views. Coeur d'Alene's diversity is likely to grow as its population does. So how will you work with those of differing views to assure them the decisions you are making are in the best interest of everyone?
I think that is an excellent question, and it brings me to a point I left out of my opening statement. On the city council and city governance in Coeur d'Alene, we have no diversity of thought. There is like a hive mind where there's uniformity. There is very little perspective from the majority. So we already have a lack of diversity when it comes to the direction that we'd like to see from some of the conservative group of the 70% that live here now. So already we have an underrepresentation of the electorate in that regard, and I would be that, separate voice. And we even, my opponent here is running with one of the other members on the city council. So, there's really kind of a collective vote there. And so, I think that it's important to understand the needs of the diverse community as it grows here, and I think we've accommodated that. But whenever we try to accommodate a conservative voice, as with NIC, we get a woke mob that just won't tolerate it. And that's the kind of thing that, is just not fair. And it's like me, when I started to run, it was personal attacks. It's like, how dare you run? How dare a non-member of the elite team or the, Urban Renewal Society, how dare you, agency, how dare you try to run for office and not be a member of that club?
Thank you. Mr. Gookin.
Thank you. And I have not been a member of that club, and actually I ran for office. If Clark had actually been paying attention for the past 12 years that I've been on council, he would have known that I'm the voice. But that's what you get when you actually show up to the meetings, Clark. You would see this happening, that there is diversity on the council with regards to opinion, and that we don't always vote the same. And again, if you've been to the meetings and watched the meetings, you'd know that we do have those discussions. The Coeur decision was a 4-2 decision. That's not all unity of thought. And the reason that I'm running with Christy Wood is because your pals on the Central Committee aligned 3 people against the incumbents. So to say that there's diversity here, you're an example of them drafting and grooming candidates to take on the city council for social issues that may apply to Portland and they may apply to Seattle or San Francisco, but not to Coeur d'Alene. Look at the city you live in. Observe what goes on here. We have a great city and we support all our citizens. And one of my roles on council is to make sure that those people who feel they haven't been heard have a voice. I will never grab anyone's mic away from them. I don't do that. We make sure that people are heard. His friends do that.
Do I get to rebut any of that?
We're going to move on to the next question, Mr. Albritton, where you may have an opportunity given the content of the question.
All right. We started with Mr. Albritton before. We'll start with Mr. Gookin this time, and then you'll have your chance to respond. While this election is supposed to be non-political, we have seen our political parties advocate for certain candidates, which you both just spoke about a moment ago. Do you feel that this is a beneficial to the election process? Why or why not? Mr. Gookin?
Anything that becomes partisan immediately becomes poisoned. The decisions that we make on Coeur d'Alene City Council really have nothing to do with the Republican Party platform. Actually, the parts of the platform that it has to deal with are specifically the parts that the KCRCC itself ignores, which is regarding transparency, which of course, if we've seen on NIC, which you apparently like what's going on at NIC, they don't believe in transparency. They had to redo a couple of meetings because they don't believe in transparency. And the Central Committee isn't very transparent with a lot of things too. Then it go into the other thing that's on there is fiscal accountability. I am the fiscal conservative on council, but yet as your friends on the NIC board have proven, spending money is not an objection. These people spend money. I mean, to compare it to drunk sailors or even Democrats is rude. They spend money all the time. I am a fiscal conservative. I've never voted for a property tax increase. This partisan infection of nonpartisan offices has led to dysfunction on the NIC board. It's led to dysfunction in the community library network, threats of lawsuits, resignations, a lot of negative things going on. We've just saw a recall up in the West Bonner School District because one of their people was in there causing chaos. And I think the people have had enough of it. And we'll find out in this election if that's the case. I think it is, and I think it's time to put a stop to it.
Thank you, Councilman. And I apologize, I didn't refer to you by your proper title, Councilman.
I'm a candidate. You don't need to call me councilman. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Albritton.
Well, you know, there really are no nonpartisan offices. To think that there are, when it comes to agenda-driven politics that we have taking over in our city today, it's obvious that, you know, you can have nominal parties, but the Republican Party in Kootenai County and Coeur d'Alene and Idaho in general has been completely infiltrated. But I will say this about the uniparty of the Urban Renewal Agency. If you look at the biographies of all these people, and Dan, I know, has voted against it. My opponent has said, you know, I'm against this, we need to end it. I get that, but he hasn't made any progress in getting that done. So I don't know how genuine that is. You'd have to work with the state legislature since that's where that happens. So using your relationship with the state legislature, you would be able to do something like that. I don't have any friends on the Kootenai County Central Republican Party Committee. I'm not a member of it, never have been, and I don't have any friends on it. So I don't understand this thing about my friends. But yes, I think it's unfortunate that everything is agenda-driven and everything is politicized. So I'm not even sure if these races should be considered nonpartisan at this point.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Next question, Mr. Albritton. Can you state what the greatest risk to our community currently is, and how do you plan to approach that risk?
Well, you know, in talking to the people that live here, and I've spoken to about 500 voters face to face or on the phone in the last few weeks, I think that collectively people recognize that the community is growing way too fast, and we have an outsized influence from developers in terms of controlling what happens in planning and what happens on the city council. And, you know, you don't have to attend a city council meeting to know what happens on the city council. You can stream it, you can watch it, and you can see it in the community. And what's happened here is rapid growth that's outstripped the infrastructure to support it. And so for one thing, I think the greatest risk is to allow that to continue. And unless we flip these 3 seats and reverse course, we're going to get more of the same. We've gotten more of the same for a decade. We get words about how, oh, I'm for slowing growth, but what we don't see is any actual progress in getting that under control. So that's the greatest risk, continuing on the path we're on and not letting infrastructure catch up.
Mr. Gookin?
Thank you. You're running against the wrong guy. I've been pushing this stuff for years, and one of the reasons I don't get any traction is because people like you run against me instead of running against other people. The biggest threat to the community is, of course, the infusion of partisan politics into nonpartisan races. We've seen the chaos at North Idaho College. We've seen what happens when you get partisan ideologues inside a position where we just do routine things. And this woke agenda stuff, just give me an example. I mean, you can talk about that and you can use your fear porn to rally your troops, but I want examples of what this is. The threat of partisan takeover here is real, and it should frighten everyone. The city is very well run, and we don't need the chaos and the lawsuits and just the mayhem that happens when the KCRCC takes over the majority of a board. It is crazy. And what is this urban renewal stuff? I've been fighting urban renewal since 2005. It's hard to get traction in local government. And this is another problem that the KCRCC and their groomed candidates, such as my opponent, keep putting on, is they think that when you come up here, you become a god. And you don't. You have to work with other people to get things done. I have to work with Christy Wood, and we disagree on stuff, but we can do so civilly. And in order to get that needle moved, you need a lot of momentum and you need a lot of work. You can't just be a Todd Banducci and expect to get things done.
Thank you, gentlemen. Moving on to the next one. Smart city has been a word that's been thrown around quite a bit. How would you define smart city? And are you for or against our community moving towards that type of platform? I'm sorry, we'll start with you, Councilman Gookin.
Thank you. Yeah, the whole smart city thing is absolutely terrifying. You know, it makes Orwell look tame, and that it's all that about control of the citizens. The actual cost to implement a smart city would be prohibitive. It would be really expensive. But what we got to look for, and things that I've actually done on council, is you got to be careful in some of the incremental approaches to that direction. So while I don't think Coeur d'Alene is going to head there, and we are very sensitive to people's concerns about that, and I do communicate with people. Talked to a lady today who is afraid about her water meter update, which we're going to a new technology, and she wanted to know if it was 5G, smart city. It's not. But I did that research for her. Some of the smaller incremental things, for example, parking requirements. This is something that I really pay attention to. If you're putting a new development and there's not enough parking spaces, that's kind of along the line of what people are talking about with this smart city thing. In other words, the insistence that in the future we're all just going to walk everywhere, we're going to ride bikes. And that's unrealistic. People have cars. People drive cars. We need to make sure the parking requirements are there. That's kind of where it touches on us. Higher levels of government, I would be more concerned, but realistically, smart city technology cannot be implemented unless the government goes to a central bank digital currency. And that would be horrifying. That has nothing to do with us, but that would be the first step.
Thank you. Mr. Albritton?
Thank you. Yeah, well, we have a rare point of complete agreement here with my opponent. We both attended the same briefing by a local group against smart cities, and it was a pretty thorough briefing, but I'm pretty familiar with the concept myself. I've seen elements of it at work in Southern California on the highways where the road knows what car is where, and you don't have to by toll or anything like that. But the question is always, on the elements of convenience, what is the ultimate plan? And what is it there for? And so for all the good reasons my opponent lists, I include myself in opposing the concept and the implementation of smart technologies in cities like Smart City.
Thank you, Mr. Albritton. We're going to come back to you, and we're actually going to jump back to a follow-up question. So we talked about the greatest risk to our community. What do you believe the greatest asset of our community is?
That's a great question. The greatest asset of our community is the beautiful natural environment and the pristine nature of the lake and the lakefront and the riverfront on Spokane River. And as we've seen increasingly, is getting developed, and it's getting high-rise dwellings, high-density dwellings all along Riverstone, and like Riverstone. And as we look at what the plans are, we see that, there's nothing really to prevent that from continuing. But it's our natural environment here that we need to be stewards of and that we need to protect for future generations.
Thank you. Mr. Gugan.
Yeah, the greatest asset is the lake, of course. There's lots of other community assets that we have. We have a great library. We have a great school in North Idaho College. These are under threats from my opponent's supporters. Nature is also a curse to us. Unfortunately, we have people who live here who are retired and do not really help us grow the economy the way we can for the young people who are looking for those jobs and looking to stay around. Our biggest export in Kootenai County is young people. And so I love having retired people here. I'm going to be retired soon myself. We have a lot of people who are on fixed incomes, and we need to do better with attracting jobs for our young people. And this has to counter, of course, the beauty of the area that keeps everyone coming here. So that's something we really need to focus on. I would love to see urban renewal instead of planting high-end homes for wealthy people who don't live here all the time. Go working to bring jobs here. I would love to see that, because as much as, if you have young people, if you have kids and they graduate from high school, they're going somewhere else, and I wish they could stick around. That would be awesome.
Thank you both. We will move on to our next question here. You both touched on the lake there a moment ago. So with the ongoing droughts and the temperature rising in our area, which we've seen over the past decade, should the city explore options to reduce water usage, especially in the summer, to reduce the possible shortages we've seen in such areas such as Spirit Lake? And I'm sorry, Councilman Gugan, please.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so this came up to me, and they all of a sudden came to me and said, hey, what do you think about doing odd even day water rationing? And I said, that's not going to fly, especially because the city uses most of our water. City and the school district use about 60% of our water. So I said, if we want to put that on the citizens, we need to show an example first and go to every other day water rationing. Here's a weird thing, though, is every time they do an annexation or a zone upgrade, I always look at all the details in the plan. And streets are really important to me because we got to talk about traffic, but also our resources such as water. And in every single report, the water department has always said, oh yeah, the capacity's there, the capacity's there. Then weirdly enough, after we annex 440 acres for Coeur, we get a report that says, whoops, there might be a problem with the aquifer. And it's like, wow, isn't that coincidental? So now all of a sudden the question's going to come up, and I did give the water department the heads up. This is going to be an issue coming forward. The state's finally doing a study on the aquifer. They're going to check the depth of the aquifer, which apparently has not been done for a while, and find out what the effect is of all the water being drawn out of there, because we have wells going dry. The city's doing okay, but this is going to be a major concern going forward, especially with the upzones and the annexations.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Albritton?
Within a week of filing to run for the city council seat, the first city people I met with was the retiring Terry Pickles and Kyle Marine at the Water District, because of one of the city council meetings I didn't attend, in which I saw Terry Pickle give his report on the capacity situation with the city wells, the 11 city wells. And when I met with them, they covered the information that Mr. Gookin just shared with us about the aquifer itself and the study that's being done and the capacity issues. And what will we do when we continue to just add and don't have advanced knowledge of whether or not we can really support that water. So as a focused backup, we really have to understand that before we start those kind of projects and before we start letting developers plod headlong without a plan for how that's going to be resolved. I also am well aware that the city is the #1 user, so looking at rate plans that are punitive or reward people for using less water, that's great, but the city itself is using the vast majority of the water. So one quick question there is, why do we need to keep building large city facilities that consume a lot of water? And the schools, are there things that we can do to cut their utilization in the current situation, or have them use different forms of irrigation?
Okay, we're going to move on to the last question and then final comments. Mr. Albritton, over the years, the Pride in the Park event has caused a fair share of controversy. Do you believe the city should approve the LGBTQ community using city space? Why or why not?
So first of all, the city needs to be neutral in that environment. And as long as the activity is legal and abides by the laws and the requirements of such an event, that's not a problem. The real problem is, a few years ago, when we had Antifa announce that they were going to provide security for the event, and it goaded and tried to provoke through social media a local response, like when a bunch of folks showed up in downtown Coeur d'Alene. The other time, they threatened to come destroy the K-27 memorial, and a bunch of us showed up with the AR-15s just being citizens walking around. The point is, that got set up, and then the photo op, they couldn't get any locals to show up and oppose it, so they had some out-of-state group of white nationalists and a photo op with the Coeur d'Alene police, Antifa, and the Pride folks. So now they get to position the whole thing as, oh, well, if you're against Pride in the Park, you must be a white nationalist. But yet, that's not what happened, because no one from Coeur d'Alene showed up. They had to import a problem. So the answer to the question is, if it's legal, and if it's permissible, and if it's done within the law, the city has to be neutral and has to provide the resources to these groups. And no one that I know of who's a conservative would oppose that. What we oppose is Antifa providing security from out of town.
Thank you. Mr. Gookin.
Hi. So my duty as an elected official is to protect your rights. And that includes the right to speak at a public meeting. That includes a right to assemble. And any group can use our parks as long as they're peaceful. And so the wasn't Pride in the Park that was a problem. It was Antifa who showed up. And my wife and I were actually walking to the park, and we saw an Antifa guy got arrested. For some reason, they thought it'd be really clever to take the license plates off their cars. Made them easy to find. So they arrested a lot of Antifa that day. And then, of course, we had the U-Haul yahoos show up. One issue that was sensitive to the public, of course, was the drag show in the park. And earlier this year, I met with the Pride in the Park people, and I can't tell them what to do. Government shouldn't be telling private citizens what to do, but I did tell them there was a great sensitivity out there to the drag show, and they said there was not going to be a drag show this year, and there wasn't. I also asked them not to invite the Church of Satan, which they didn't. But people have a right to do things in our park, and we don't really weigh in on that one way or another. You don't see pride flags hanging from City Hall. We are neutral on this. I don't know if this was the woke agenda you were referring to earlier, because most of the stuff we do here is pretty routine, and that includes protecting your rights.
Thank you, Mr. Gookin. We are going to move to closing statements. We'll each have 1 minute for those closing statements. We'll start with you, Mr. Albritton.
Thank you. As I said earlier, we really need some diversity of thought on a city council that the average tenure is like 15 to 20 years. The city council members become a club, and then when you run against them, you fall under personal attack as if, how dare you run? How dare you stand up and try to represent 70% of the electorate who feel that their voice is not being listened to? And when we have someone like Todd Banducci, since we're naming names, win an election and then faces the kind of vitriolic riot that came from the city hall and from the other board members, it is unconscionable. That is the voice of the people. He won an election. Elections have consequences. If I win an election, and we need all 3 seats, not just mine, we win an election, we're not going to see any of that.
Mr. Gukin.
Well, winning an election doesn't make you a god. You still have to follow the law. And Todd could learn from that, too. We are united because you have been groomed and united against us. And this is your first time out, so get used to the attacks. I mean, I'm used to it. I had a microphone snatched from me, and I had a room full of women yell at me and tell me to go hang myself. And so, yeah, we have to get used to that. We need tough skin. And like I said earlier, you're running against the wrong guy. I mean, I'm usually the one that everyone would say is the conservative and is the voice of reason and all that. And that was one reason I ran originally so long ago, was because I saw a lot of united decisions up here. Not anymore. There's a lot of open discussion, and I think there's a lot of better representation. The city is run real well. Don't let them screw it up. Please vote for Dan Gukin, November 7th, seat 3. Thank you very much.
Thank you, both candidates for seat 3, Mr. Albritton and Councilman Dan Gukin. Thank you very much for your responses to our questions today. The best of luck to you both at our election November 7th. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to our CDA TV Candidate Forum, again hosted by the Coeur Group. We have our 3 candidates in front of us for seat 5 for Coeur d'Alene City Council. We have Roger Garlock, Rob Knutson, and Dan English. Thank you all for being here tonight. We are going to start with opening statements. You all each have a 1-minute opportunity to tell us a little about yourself, who you are, and why you're running for City Council. We are going to start with you, Mr. Knutson.
Well, thank you very much. Good evening. I'm Rob Knutson, and to address my most frequently asked question, I have no affiliation with a local car dealership whatsoever. I'm running for City Council because, like any candidate, I think I have something to offer, and I believe that voters should have a choice. I'm a degreed scientist by training and now something of a political scientist as a result of my interest and involvement in local government, which occurs right here in this very room most Tuesday evenings. As a biologist and an environmental specialist with 25 years of experience in private industry, it's been my duty to follow state and federal regulations while simultaneously serving the interests of my clients. And I believe that my experience will serve me well if you elect me to represent you on the City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll continue on from left to right. Mr. English.
There are over 37,000 registered voters in Coeur d'Alene. We have a total of 7 candidates for City Council. That means for every 5,300 voters, there's only one who's willing to put their name on the ballot and actually be willing to serve as an elected official. My hat is off to every candidate who's running, including my 2 opponents who are here tonight. But elections are about choices, and all 3 of us are competing to have you choose one of us. I was born here. I've spent the majority of my life in Coeur d'Alene. I've worked as a sworn police officer, a volunteer fireman, and the executive director of several nonprofit organizations. I am now a licensed therapist and co-owner of Healing Hearts Mental Health Therapy. I've served as a school board trustee and for many years as your county clerk. I have deep experience from budgets to land use planning to personnel issues. I will engage each issue thoughtfully and treat each person with respect. I'm Dan English. Thank you for your vote.
Thank you. And Mr. Garlock.
Thank you. Yep, my name's Roger Garlock. I've lived in Coeur d'Alene for the last 20 years. My primary goals in this community and have been service to our beautiful city. I moved here on January 3rd of 2003, and I've worked at pretty much every government agency and nonprofit you can think of. So I look at local government as a form of representation and service to that community, and so this is an extension of that. I've been politically involved for several years now as a candidate in the past and helping other candidates run for office. I have a degree in criminal justice and a master's in mediation, which I'm sure will suit me well when I'm sitting on this board. My experiences and my service are going to represent you very well. Met my wife here. I'm a father of 2 young children, very principled individual, and I look forward to representing all the citizens of Coeur d'Alene. Thank you.
Thank you to our candidates. At this time, I'll hand over our questions to our panelists.
Yes, thank you all for being here. We're going to start Mr. English and then continue to move left to right. Population growth can bring both opportunities and challenges. What is the biggest opportunity population growth provides, and how can the city capitalize on it? What is the biggest challenge, and how can the city overcome it?
Well, I think one of the upsides to population growth, and we've seen that, is that we've got a very active part of our community that's worked on job growth and attracting professionals here, businesses, good high-paying businesses that need technical skills, and so that has been a catalyst with some of our educational institutions from high school and K-Tech up through the college, and now, it's wonderful that we have the education corridor that you can go from, junior college to graduate school, and also part of the diversity of our community that comes with growth of, different folks from different backgrounds, but also different age groups. One of our demographics here, which is also one of the challenges, is that we have more of an aged population than a lot of places. My last full-time job before I, retired the first time was as area agency and aging director, and so well acquainted with that. So that's part of the up and the down. So thank you. That did go quick. Okay, thanks.
Sorry, Mr. Garlock.
Oh, Well, also you have to have growth in a city. We can't have a stagnant population by any means. Growth is going to happen. For us, it's happened very, very rapidly. Anybody who's lived here for more than a couple years has understood that. So, it provides, the opportunity it provides is to keep our town flourishing, whether that is with the economy. Unfortunately, right now, growth seems to be a big factor in that economy. But you can't sustain that for too long. So what happens with that, one of the things that are the challenges is how do we create an economy to match that growth? The middle class is being pushed out based on the cost of homes, and our infrastructure is falling behind. We are growing quicker than our infrastructure is keeping up. So we really need to take a look at our long-term planning as far as who we want to attract into our city. And that it would be that single-family living. We got to create generational population within Coeur d'Alene, and we have to let our infrastructure catch up to the growth. It's that is a key element to sustaining a long-term city plan.
Thank you. Mr. Knudsen.
All right. Well, I'm going to try to keep this from going down a path of boring. One of my degrees is in biology, and I have a second degree in entomology, so I've studied living organisms for quite some time, and I think that city growth parallels that kind of organic growth in many ways. So, for example, the opportunities of growth. Every cell in the body of any creature functions based on input and output, being able to take in nutrients and process that into something that's productive. And our city's growth is really the same way. The opportunity to grow our economy and to diversify our economy and our industry is really important. Of course, the challenges with living organisms is that, as soon as we're born, we're on our path to death. And I don't want to, have this take a dark turn. But really the challenges of growth that we would face come with the things that get talked about commonly these days, the density, potential for increased crime, things like that. And so, as a body ages, as a city ages, there are always going to be challenges that present themselves, but there will always be opportunities to overcome those challenges and make a positive difference in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Our next question will start off with you, Mr. Garlock. And this question actually came from some of the community sending us emails and formulated as something that would work. There was a bunch. And you actually touched on it a second ago. The massive growth of our city over the past, 10 years has caused an incredible strain on our infrastructure. What, as a city council person, if elected, would you do to help, relieve that a little bit? Those of us who've lived here a long time remember being able to make it from downtown to Hayden in 10 minutes. Yeah. And that you can't do that anymore. So how would you move to help that?
No, you can't. And, driving down here, I felt that I was driving down from my job up just south of Prairie and had to stop at my house and then come down here, and it was just a much quicker or a much slower commute than it needed to be. As I said, the growth plan, and the writing was on the wall a long time ago. The city of Coeur d'Alene boxed itself in. So now they're trapped into wanting to grow up. And they have a plan and a theory that our city is going to double within the next decade. But when you look at the road plans, that's a 20-year plan. So high-density housing is a big factor in this. We can't be packing in more people. It's just going to put a strain on the water, the police, the schools, the traffic. We have to let those catch up. So it's really, like I said, let's start focusing on that single-family living. We don't need to be building high-rises. We don't need to be rezoning every chance we could get. Let's focus on the roads, our police department, our schools. Most of the schools in Coeur d'Alene are overpopulated. I have 2 kids in the school system. They've been overpopulated for years. And that's just a factor in the growth, and those are some changes that you could help to slow that down. It's not that you can stop growth, and that would be a bad idea. But as I stated before, our infrastructure is more important than how quickly we can grow.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Knudsen.
For my benefit, would you rephrase or restate the question, please?
Basically, our community has had massive influx of people. Our infrastructure is strained beyond belief. how would you work to alleviate that?
Okay, I'll go back to my, my biological illustration. A system that is well functioning is going to be a stable system. So anytime you inject any kind of large change into that system, it has a tendency to create instability. And growth in a city is no different. When you inject a lot of people into a small area in a short period of time, there are bound to be problems. It was touched on, Roger mentioned infrastructure. So when we think about, traffic and travel times, that's a big stress point for people in our community. And it's easy to get focused on the housing issue. It's easy to get focused on density, but a byproduct of that density is actually the infrastructure that we use every day. It's important to make sure that the changes that we experience with growth and density actually we're capable of handling that or matching that with the infrastructure and the services that everybody in the city has come to expect. And so those big changes, it's tough to be too free or too limiting with that, but that's one of the things that causes instability.
Thank you, sir. Councilman?
Besides being on City Council, I also am our liaison to the Ignite Coeur d'Alene, our urban renewal district. And so between both of these entities, we focus a lot on infrastructure and traffic in particular. With the city, we've been able to work out some, I think, improving partnerships with the state and being able to, take control of some of the light signals and better coordinate them, invest in new equipment, which, it sounds like, oh, gee, that wouldn't be a big deal, just buy a smart traffic light, but they're not cheap. So we're doing that, but some of the things in partnership, and again with Ignite, like down at La Crosse and Northwest Boulevard going north, we put in a project there to put a light, and that has really helped. And now, you can have another alternative to go through down by Riverstone and things. So those are important things for the longer range plan. Like one of the things that, boy, is a high on my priority list is to be able to have another overpass over the freeway, kind of going from the hospital district to link up there. And so, I think there's things we're doing, but we continue to be forward-looking, and that's what I'd work on too. Thanks.
Mr. Knutson, we'll start with you again with this question. Coeur d'Alene is filled with people with different backgrounds and political views. Coeur d'Alene's diversity is likely to grow as its population does. How will you work with those of differing views to assure them the decisions you are making are in the best interest of everyone?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. I work in an industry, in the environmental industry, that is just by definition very polarizing, especially these days with so many issues that are presented in the media, and then even at the local level, they can be pretty debatable or controversial. So in my experience, we have to listen to multiple sides of every debate or of every argument and consider the different emotions that go along with those arguments, as well as the scientific basis for any statements or justifications that are being made that would try to lead us down a certain path. And I think when it comes to diversity, having that ability to have an open communication and never shut people down if you disagree with them out front or outright. I have a kind of a personal practice that I try to employ, and that's to always leave room for one more conversation. Because if you shut people down, that opportunity goes away, and you want to be able to maintain that. So that's one of my principles. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman English.
City council positions are officially nonpartisan, but these days we know they're really, I don't know if there is such a thing. Now, I think that it should be honored, and I think that it's in the state code and constitution to have nonpartisan positions, but, that's kind of gone by the wayside, and, so that's the reality. One of the little things about me may not know is I am a Democrat, and that's fine, but I was also the last elected Democrat at the courthouse. I was the last Democrat for quite a while, and I got elected for several terms as the only Democrat. And people would say, how in the world, do you do that? Well, it's because, I talk to folks, we work together, and in government there really isn't a Republican way to build that street light or a Democrat way or something. So it comes very comfortable and natural to me to talk to folks, doesn't really matter the political persuasion, and especially folks who, I really can appreciate, again, too, as a counselor, people are very passionate about where they're coming from. That's fine, and I'm not going to try to talk them out of it. And so I think, our diversity is, I think, a strength that we've got, age, political, and different things. So I embrace it. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Garlock.
Yeah, can you repeat the question, please?
Yes, Coeur d'Alene is filled with people with different backgrounds and political views. Coeur d'Alene's diversity is likely to grow as its population does. How will you work with those of differing views to assure them the decisions you are making are in the best interest of everyone?
First, I want to clarify, nonpartisan just means how a ballot is printed. I mean, whatever you do, whether it's work or local politics, your personal viewpoints are going to be present in your decision making. But when you talk about diversity, I think of diversity of thought. And I spent 20 plus years in social work. I'm a conservative in my personal life. How many conservative social workers has anybody met? So in my entire career, I have spent working side by side, partnering with people that think differently than I do. And you work towards that common goal and you find a result. I'm very good at it. I've been doing it a long time. So, that's... I don't think my viewpoints would change when I reached city council, but yes, I would approach problem solving and solutions from, that background as those conservative principles. That does not mean that I can't work with somebody who thinks differently than me. I would not be here as a representative if that was the case. So, but, I look at that diversity of thought, and I think we need more of it in local politics. I think that there are some rigid viewpoints in our current boards and commissions. And so as a community advocate, as I stated, I've spent so long doing that. And I talk to construction workers and parents when I'm coaching teams, and I want to represent them and help them represent themselves on these boards and really create some diversity.
Thank you, sir. Councilman, the next question is for you, and you guys kind of touched on a little bit, but we'd like you to elaborate a little bit. While this election is supposed to be non-political, we've seen political parties advocate for certain candidates. Do you feel this is a benefit to the election process or a detriment?
As I said, I truly think there still is a role for nonpartisan. I wish they would go back that way, but that, that ship has probably sailed. But I think it's a detriment to the process. I think it can easily get in the way of things because, which of us wants to be identified by a label? And, Roger said, he's been counseling social work, and I have too. And one of the things we know is one of the worst things you can do is, give somebody a label and then treat them as if that's who they are. I mean, that's not them, that's not their identity. And so that's, I think, the worst part of what, some of the partisan stuff does. On the other hand, it certainly has its place, and the county was, and I think that very much had a place, and because they're each party at the national level and the local level, although I guarantee it's way different often at the local level than the national, but I mean, they have a platform, they have different things they stand for, they're against and things, and so that's helpful for people, in making some decisions, but not in a local city council race or school trustee. I was one of those two things.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Garlock.
As I said before, again, it's just that if there's a D and an R on the ballot. But the fact of the matter is, there's certain things that identify you. I'm a father. I'm a parent. I'm a Christian. I'm a conservative. Those are all things that are very important in the decision-making process. And no government has more of an impact on your life than local government, city councils and school boards. That determines the neighborhoods you live in, the roads you travel, what your kids are taught in school. And so by identifying yourself with a certain political party, that's not your one and only identification of who you are, but it does help the public maybe have some understanding of where your thought process and decision making comes from. So it's not that, they should stay nonpartisan, because again, as Dan English stated, he's a Democrat. I'm a Republican. I've been a Republican my whole life. I'm not ashamed of that. I don't need to hide that from the public. I hope they vote for me based on the work I've done in this community and how I've represented this community. When somebody wants me to show up, I will show up. I've been to several groups during this process. I'm actually going to be cooking a meal with the Democrats on October 21st. So I'm going to step in there and I'm going to talk to those individuals and I'm going to ask to be their representative. So, but again, people should know where I'm coming from, and I have no qualms telling anybody that I'm Republican.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Knutson?
I got nothing but parties going through my head. Can you repeat the question?
Absolutely. So a selection is supposed to be nonpartisan. We have seen political parties advocate for certain candidates. Do you believe this is a detriment or advantageous to the process?
I'm an unaffiliated candidate in this election, and I have to believe that a nonpartisan position or a nonpartisan seat on the city council is probably the most ideological, pure form. However, I do realize that there are people who are interested in party affiliation because it demonstrates, what kind of person you are, what your beliefs are, how you tend to vote. I'm a conservative individual. I know we're not allowed to use props, but conservative means different things to different people. If I were conservative when it comes to seat number 5 on the city council, I would want to keep Dan English in his regular seat. But I'm not. I'd like to see a change, and that's why I'm here. But in other aspects of my life, I come from a traditional family. I don't like, rapid change over a short period of time. So in many ways, I'm a conservative individual. But when it comes to a nonpartisan position on the city council who has to represent or should be willing to represent the entire population of the city, I like the idea of being unaffiliated because I think it keeps those doors open. Thank you.
Okay, this is going to be the last question, and then we'll go to closing statements. And I believe, Mr. Garlock, you will start this. What is your position on the current short-term rental code? And do you feel that in its current state, it is too restrictive or not restrictive enough?
Yeah, it's, there's some misnomers about short-term rental properties. One of them is that people have to have a permit and to operate those short-term rentals. As far as how many there are, the guesstimate is between 600 and 800. I actually just met with a local board that is trying to advocate for their local businesses. And, so I look at it as that there needs to be some consistency with the arguments for and against. I know that some council members have argued against short-term rentals and neighborhoods have argued against them, but they've used the same arguments for long-term locations as well. And so it's unfortunate that we're lacking that consistency of how we govern our city. And, it's a business for people. It's not like they're owned by corporations. Should there be a cap on it? I believe so. I think that, the way to operate that would be to allow just a certain amount, whatever that number may be. It's hard to say, especially since it fluctuates from time to time. I wouldn't say that short-term rental properties are the cause of our rental crisis in the city. So I think there's other things to focus on than Airbnbs. But it's definitely something to take a look at.
Thank you. Mr. Knutson.
Yeah, I know short-term rentals take a lot of heat recently just because of the way that we view housing and rental shortages in the town. I think of this from a different perspective. We don't have a lot of control over free market economy and what people do with their own homes, whether they want to rent them out to short-term renters or even to longer-term renters. I look at it more from a perspective of being a homeowner, on a street that may be more than 50% occupied with short-term rentals. I think that's probably more of a concern at the local level for neighbors. As far as any sort of downstream data, I don't know that any of those codes or data have been collected for long enough to understand what kind of an influence those types of regulations have in our community. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. English.
Sure. Well, the short-term rental, I mean, and like a lot of things, the pressure has ebbed and flowed a bit, coinciding with some of the real estate market and things and time of the year. And, we have been looking at this as a city. We did put in an initial, short-term rental code and deliberately took kind of a little bit of a, let's go kind of easy, but we need to have some kind of boundaries on it. So we do in fact have a, permit process and fee structure, and we're in the process of gathering the data to identify that. And, again, that's been a shifting target because, the demand hasn't been as high, but actually the time when maybe there isn't the high pressure on it is the best time maybe to really look at it and see what's reasonable. And so that's something that we will be doing. I think that, they're a benefit to the community. I've had family members stay there, and I would have been sorry if they weren't there. At the same time, I appreciate the neighborhood concerns, and so it'll be a balancing thing that we'll continue to look at. Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you all. We are going to move to our closing statements for this session for seat 5. We are going to start with Mr. Garlick. We will move from audience right to left.
Okay.
1 minute, Mr. Garlick.
Yeah, thank you again. I appreciate everybody watching. I appreciate you guys putting on this event. Come November 7th, you get to make a choice on who you want to represent you. And really, that's what it comes down to, is representation. Who is going to be the best representative for all the citizens of Coeur d'Alene? And, as I stated before, we talked about endorsements and stuff. I was endorsed by over 5,000 people 2 years ago. Every day, I live that lifestyle that is impacted by local government. I own a home just north of Ramsey Elementary. I have 2 kids in the local school system. I punch a clock 50 hours a week. So every day I'm out there talking to those individuals that have been here for a long time, and I've talked to these individuals that are just moving here. I've served this community for 20 years, and I want to continue to serve it as your representative on Coeur d'Alene City Council. So please, November 7th, vote for Roger Garlock. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garlick. Mr. English.
Thank you. Well, my family has been here for a long time. If you look at the plaque up there, and one of them says English, and actually I am related to them. People wonder about the English funeral home. Was my uncle Don, and then, cousin Bruce and his kid took over, and so I had multiple generations before me, and now we've had kids, grandkids, and 2 great-grandkids. So we've got a pretty deep and extensive family tree. So, I knew the community, born and raised here, grown up, have seen the changes. I'm very sensitive to what our issues are. You know, I get stuck at the same traffic light as you and traffic jams and, you know, pay the same property tax you do. So I'm mindful of that, but I'm engaged. I think if you look at my long-term record, I've got a lot of things that I'm proud of and involved. So again, I hope you'll vote for, actually, in this case, me, Dan English for Coeur d'Alene City Council, seat 5. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. English. And Mr. Knutson, your final statements.
All right. Thank you very much. As you know, in the real world, controversial and complicated issues are never resolved in a vacuum, and it requires input from all interested parties to resolve those issues. My approach to problem solving, as I mentioned previously, I do consider the human variables and emotions that are part of any debate. But my approach also relies heavily on very critical concepts like logic and the law. I already prepare for and attend city council meetings. Many candidates don't even attend until after they've filed for candidacy, if they even attend at all. For these reasons and more, I hope to be your choice for city council seat number 5 on November 7th. Thanks for listening to me tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Knutson. And thank you for all of our candidates for seat 5 for Coeur d'Alene City Council. We appreciate you expressing your views to our questions presented to you this evening. All the best of luck November 7th. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good call, Jimmy.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to our CDA TV candidate forum presented by the Coeur Group. We are now moving on to our Zone 2 School District 271 trustee. And we have our candidates in front of us, Jimmy McAndrew and Mike Stavish. We will have 20 minutes for your session here. We will ask questions to each one of you. You'll each have an opportunity to answer our questions this evening. But we'll start with a 1-minute intro to tell us about yourself, who you are, and why are you running for the trustee position. And we will start with Mr. Stavish.
Thank you. I appreciate being first. I'm Mike Stavish. I am running for the school board. I'm a small business owner. I'm a husband, and I'm a father to 3 children currently attending our schools. Our communities have lost a lot of trust in our schools and school administration because we are concerned with spending and curricula accountability. We want assurances from trustworthy people that we are spending our dollars wisely and that the curricula is based off a classic and healthy education. I'm your person that you can trust, and I want to offer this trust through transparency. I will look through our budget closely, break it down for you, and give it to you concisely and clearly so you can understand it. I will look at our curricula and ensure that it is based on a classic and healthy education. Ultimately, I want to ensure that we're producing children who are educated and have positive life values. So I want you to vote for trust and vote for transparency. Vote for Mike Stavish.
Thank you, Mr. Stavish. Mr. McAndrew.
Great. Hi, my name is Jimmy McAndrew. I am a lifelong North Idahoan, and in the spirit of transparency, I think it's worth noting that I did co-found the Coeur Group 20 years ago, so I think just want to put that out there. And also I want to give my opponent here a tip of the cap because not everybody would, it's kind of a home court thing and not everybody would get up here. So just in the spirit of transparency, I want to throw that out there. Why am I running for this position? I've got skin in the game. I've got a little boy and a little girl in the Coeur d'Alene School District, and I want to see that they have the kind of Idaho education that I was brought up with. I want to preserve that for them. I want to preserve a well-rounded scholastic opportunities for them. And the position, I knew it was going to be vacated, and I looked at it, I looked at the requirements, and it's what I do on a daily basis. I've professionally, I've led high achieving teams in this community for more than 20 years. And civically, my wife and I have done everything we can, spent a lot of time giving back to this community and trying to bless others through that. So it's a perfect fit for me, and I'm ready to roll up my sleeves on January of next year and be your trustee in Zone 2.
Thank you, Mr. McAndrew.
All right. And Jimmy touched on this and before I could get to it, but Jimmy is a longstanding member of the Coeur Group. He has been completely removed from this process. It was kind of fun to leave him in the dark for once because he has been the head of this for a while, but he has no unfair advantage, and just for transparency-wise, he is a member. Moving on. Jimmy, question for you. Yep. Did you vote for the levy both times, either or, and why?
Right. Yes, I proudly voted for the levy. I think I've been pretty vocal within the community for that. And why? Well, number one, the first time it came up, I completely understand folks that were against it for the perpetuality of it. I get it. I fault them zero. And if you voted against the levy, I don't fault you, okay? From a business perspective, it makes a lot of sense. We've passed it for 30 plus years, okay? So that's number one. Number two, elections are really expensive. And you tell me if the taxpayers have won over and over and over passing a levy, okay? Number three, we are tasking some of our taxpayer dollars, our supported employees, with basically coming up with a campaign and running a levy and probably utilizing about 40% of their time for months on end every 2 years. And that's a disservice to taxpayers. It's a disservice to families. It's a disservice to kids. That attention could be put on things like student achievement. So for that reason, those are my practical business mind reasons for voting for it in perpetuity. And number two, I'm just glad that they came back, they changed it, made the community happy. I think it got out the vote. Obviously, it got out the vote, but it's non-negotiable to me. we can't strip $25 million out of the budget and expect student achievement to go up and expect to support families and parents. So for those reasons, and again, the councilman earlier said that his kids are, their classrooms are busting at the seams. You take away that levy dollars and you're going to increase every classroom by 5 pupils. Nobody wants that for their kids.
Thank you. Mr. Stavish.
Yes, thank you. So, just to give some background on people, our state funds schools intentionally through our supplemental levies. It's a bit of an unfortunate name because it sounds like bonus or extra, but the way it's used is not particularly bonus or extra. The state actually expects us to fund up to 25% of our total budget through these supplemental levies. I did not vote for it the first go-around because the messaging was terrible. I did not have enough understanding of what it was exactly and why they were asking for it forever, and it was very concerning. And there were some other parties out there forwarding that message of vote no for it because, wow, this is crazy. So I voted no on it. I looked into it. I went to a meeting that the board put in January about what the levy is and why they're doing it, and I actually was able to learn more about it and understand it, and realizing that it's 25% of the budget. Surely no organization could survive a 25% cut. That's outrageous. But the levy is exactly why the community currently has lost trust in the financial responsibility of our schools and the school board. And it's all mostly down to their messaging. Mr. McAndrew suggests we not do any more messaging still, and then I guess is crossing his fingers that we won't have this same problem when it comes around. I think we will. So I actually advocate the opposite. We need more and better messaging so we can increase the trust that's been lost. Thank you.
Mr. Stavish, we're going to start with you for this question. With the amount of disinformation that has been passed around in the previous 2 levy votes, how can you be transparent with financial information to keep the community informed of the impact of future levy votes?
I think that's really just going to come down to the actual time and money of putting together the messaging that explains this to people in a way that they understand. Like I mentioned in the previous question, we do need to spend that effort on this because the problem right now is trust and transparency, and we can't just put our fingers in our ears and hope that the problem just rolls away. I don't think it will. So what we need to do is probably organize people in the admin to actually spend part of their time on that exactly. When we look at the budgets right now, they're a little too technical for most people. Even if you understand what the technical terms are, they aren't terribly sensible because there's no details about what they might include. A certain technical term can be 4 or 5 different things sometimes. Not all of us are accountants, so we got to try and put it together in a way that makes sense to the people who are going to read this. That's our average Joe voter. And I'm not under any convinced way that we're just burning tons of dollars on our schools. But I am of the opinion that we can always look for things to trim, look for things to cut. There's important aspects of our school budget that we should probably want to increase, especially I think in terms of the salaries, the teachers' salaries. We need to be more competitive, and that's going to help improve what they do in the schools. And if we're willing to cut the budget in some areas, we can apply it to those areas.
Thank you. Mr. McAndrew.
Well, I don't recall advocating against being transparent with parents or taxpayers. I don't know where that's come from. However, I realize that we are operating on a lean budget when it comes to our communication department. We have 2 folks over there. They have an operating annual budget of $40,000. Okay, that's for 10,000 students. It's for how many guardians, grandparents, parents out there that depend on communication. So certainly you could divert some of those dollars and some of that attention into that area. But we in North Idaho really appreciate a low tax levy rates, and I'm a firm believer that we can sustain that. I'm a firm believer that the 2-way street that will be opened up with communication with me as a trustee. You'll walk into those school board meetings and honestly, the environment will change, because I think the default position of a school board trustee should be a listener first and a talker second. So you will see a noticeable difference when I'm in there.
Thank you. And Mr. McAndrew, this next question is for you. Last year, the school board accepted a district-wide K through 5th grade ELA, an English Language Arts curriculum. Before that, each school had the choice of what curriculum to use in those grades. Do you support the use of district-wide curriculums in our school system?
Here's what I believe. This is what I do support. I support focusing all of our attention on student achievement. For the last 10 years, we've had no strategic plan implemented, okay? And we do now, this spring, okay? Think of that. Think if you were trying to raise your family or you're trying to operate your business without a strategic plan, what would happen, right? So curriculum should be rigorous, it should be relevant, and it should be reflective of our values here in North Idaho. That's the kind of curriculum that I favor. But the start is taking a look at this plan, making sure that it's laser focused on student achievement, and holding the district and myself as a trustee accountable. In 4 years, you can look back and you can see how kids have advanced their college preparedness, their scores, and hold me accountable. But between now and then, I will hold the superintendent accountable. They've got some great goals out there and great aspirations. I always have ambitious aspirations in everything I do, and those are the results that the taxpayers want to see.
Thank you. Mr. Stavish?
Hi there. Yeah. So I favor curricula that works, whether we do it by the district or by the school or by the whole state. So that comes down to examining individual curriculums and what they do. They come and go, like any other group that's trying to remain relevant. They'll write their new curricula every year, this year, that year, and then they go and try and sell it to schools, and they try and convince us to use it. My observation of many of them is they contain a lot of fluff that I don't think teachers even do or use. So it's kind of silly that we get enticed to change them when we're probably not actually changing anything real in the classrooms. I think that's silly and it wastes a lot of time. But going back to checking, does it actually do what it claims it's going to do? We hope to measure student achievement through testing and those kinds of things, and we do that. And our schools are meh. They certainly could be a lot better. I feel like they do have a good idea on how to try and improve that. Our superintendent and our deputy superintendent seem like they're following some things in a clear and concise way to move forward, and they have benchmarks that they tell us that they're looking for. But I think perhaps it's probably more important, rather than just saying, oh, he's passed a test and he's going to graduate with honors even or whatever. Who cares? In 3 years, does he have a job and is he happy? Maybe we should try and follow up with students once in a while and see if we're succeeding in that way. I feel in that way most curriculums actually let us down a great deal.
Mr. Stavish, currently a common concern is that school board trustees are not as available as the residents of their zones would like. If elected, what is your plan to answer those concerns of availability?
Well, at the moment, I have a personal website. It's mikestavish.com. I'm currently using it to try and campaign, but I'll be happy to leave that channel open. You can submit on a web form or even email me directly through it. I've published my personal phone number in a number of places already, and people are calling me about this. And I think I'm happy to continue doing that unless I start receiving some kind of weird abuse. I don't know if that'll happen. I think we have good people here, so I hope that doesn't happen. Of course, I'm going to try and make every meeting I can meet. I'm going to try and show up early. I'm going to try and stay late. People are going to have questions. When I see people having a particular problem, like at the last meeting, there was a problem with the bus routes and so on, and I saw a couple of the trustees come down and talk to those particular people individually to try and get more specifics out of them, and I thought that was admirable and something I would hope to emulate. So I think I'll try to be as available as could humanly be possible. I'll give you my phone, I'll give you my email, and I'm going to be at all the meetings.
Thank you. Mr. McAndrew.
I mean, it really comes down to a matter of bandwidth, and I have it. I operate at a high level. I always have. I've got 20-year track record of being a great listener and being successful in business here in town. And you don't accumulate 1,000 clients in Kootenai County without being a really good listener. So I'm just going to take everything that I've learned in the civic world and in the professional world and take that with me, to this position. So I think it's just hard work. Another thing that I'll do is I'll be making my rounds to the schools on a continual basis. They need to see me. I need to see them. I need to see what's going on. And nobody's more ready to roll up their sleeves than I am. So it's just boils down to hard work, communication, and getting back to folks. I'm told, work-wise, I balance a lot. I get home from work, play with the kids, look at homework, do that, engage with my wife, and lots of times I turn it on after hours. My 100% is most people's 150. Okay, and I'm going to bring that to this position.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. McAndrew, ask any teacher about their class budget, and they'll give you a personal story about how they fund their classroom with their own personal funds. How can you as a trustee help these teachers stop spending the little salaries they already make on helping their students do better and have the school actually fund the classrooms correctly?
Great question. So I have personally, over the last 20 years, and I'm going to tip the nod to the core group, but you find innovative ways to do it. Okay, so the locker program, which is our flagship project here in Kootenai County, it's in almost every single school in the district. Okay, we found a need, we met it, no tax dollars are used, and kids up to 300 a week can come and go, and they can get school supplies, hygiene products, whatever toiletries, you name it, whatever they can, so they can quit with the, I don't have shoes or I don't have a stick of deodorant, and I can focus on my academics. Okay, so it takes the community. Those dollars aren't just going to pop out of nowhere into the teacher's hands. Okay, so we can take those kind of real world solutions that we find in the private sector and emulate them, and we're a generous community. So I think the connections that I have will be a great platform for that. Number two, we just we just have to lean on the community a lot. I think the schools already do that. I think they're always looking for innovative ways to fundraise. But it's just not going to pop out of thin air. We just got to look for solutions that are kind of outside the box in order to fill those needs.
Thank you. Mr. Stavish?
I understand this on a little bit of a personal level. My wife is a trained teacher and went through all the process and everything, and even student taught for a year in Prairie View Elementary, I think it was. And we were really happy with the performance of one of the teachers of our children, and we wanted to benefit her specifically, actually, and knowing that they struggle with trying to get any kind of discretionary budget in their classrooms, we asked her specifically, what could we do for you? We want to give you something that you're going to use in your classroom. We like the way you're doing it, and we want to support that. And we had to kind of hop through some rigmarole. I understand there's, maybe a problem with like bribing or something or other, so we kind of basically just had to buy her a specific thing for the classroom and hand it to her directly and create a form at the office. I thought that was okay. A little bit that taught me was there's no clear administrative path to make something like this happen. So we do these fundraisings and things sometimes, bake sales, right? The PTA is having another bake sale, but they don't tell you what they're doing with it, and so we're like, all right, you raised some money, where's it going? It's like, it's not even usually that much money, but if it's like, well, we're not just raising money, we're actually trying to get an XYZ for teacher this, who's going to use it to do this. Now people are like, oh, that makes sense. Maybe we could contribute in some way. Maybe we could do something to help that out. So community involvement is important in that way. But I do have to go back to the small cuts I want to make. Specifically, I would target admin. I feel like admin always gets big and bloated. If we can cut 3 or 4% at admin, we can give 1% to discretionary budget. Thank you.
Can we put a plug in, though, also for Excel Foundation? They already exist to do that, to serve that purpose in our school district. They fund projects that would go unfunded in the classrooms, and they put it on the teacher. They put it on the teacher at the end of the summer, every summer. Say, come up with your innovative ideas, your challenging, your rigorous projects that you want to see in the classroom, and then they lean on this generous community to fund those things. So you can take some of the things that are already proof in the pudding and probably go a little bit bigger with it.
Any response there, Mr. Stavish?
No, that sounds great. I've read a little bit about that before, and certainly I'm ashamed to have not mentioned it myself.
I may have chaired it once.
Okay, Mr. Stavish, we'll be starting with you again. Should Coeur d'Alene schools enact a policy prohibiting the discussion or teaching of gender identity, sexual orientation, transgender identity, and gender expression, similar to what the Nampa School Board did recently?
Well, I have to get a little hardline on this one. I believe it's a particularly false ideology. I'd rather we don't teach false things. I'm fine if parents are going to teach that in their homes, but being that I consider it ideology, I don't consider it medicine, I don't consider it science, we're not going to bring that into schools, I'm afraid. I don't think we should tolerate it because we look closely and honestly about the results of what that brings, and some of it is pretty gross and vulgar. I mean, literally, they want to sever penises and cut breasts off. That's a terrible end for whatever this thing is supposed to be, so I don't want to touch it. I don't want any part of that. So, yeah, I do support a policy that says, no, we're not going to do this because it's wrong and because it leads to bad things. I want to give children positive life values. Mutilating your body doesn't sound like one of them. Thank you.
How much time do I have for this? 90 seconds?
30 seconds, Mr.
I
McKendry.
need like 10. It doesn't belong in the schools. We shouldn't be talking about it. We should be preparing kids for the real world. You know, I'm not trying to, pass on any judgment here. It's just not meant for the classroom. It's not meant to prepare kids for real life or jobs or, I can think of a million other things that we should spend our time and focus and energy and efforts on with kids and bringing them up to be productive citizens. So maybe I took more than 10 seconds, but that's all I need.
Thank you, gentlemen. So this is the same question we asked the city council position seats because it's been bled over into you guys. But the school board election is supposed to be non-political. We have seen the political parties advocating for certain candidates. Do you feel that's an advantageous event, or does it not work?
Am I first? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Mr. McAndrew. Yes,
Okay.
you're first.
You know what? I am a lifelong proud Republican. If folks want to vote for me because I'm a Republican, I'm fine with it. I really am. You know what my values are when I say that. Now, that's the thing that's more important than an R and a D, though. It's my values. Okay, and I think that I've had a great track record in Kootenai County of just putting my values into care of other people. So I think that's what's really important. It's the desire to do the job well, and to be a blessing to others. I mean, we honor our Father when we bless others. Okay, we believe that in our household, and that's more important than a letter next to your name. I certainly know that the kid taking a test that just wants to, bring home an A to his class, they're not going to care if the school board trustee's got an A an R or a D next to their name, right? And neither do the parents. The parents want to make sure that the trustee that's in position has their kids' best interest in mind. Okay, kids want opportunities. Parents want their kids to go to a place where they're protected and they're going to get a world-class education. The taxpayers want to see that return on their investment. And if we do all of that, the kids are going to win. So, yes, I'm proud of the fact that I'm a lifelong Republican. Is that going to help me? Fiscally, I would say so. My values you're going to know my values when I'm up there. But at the end of the day, it's all about the kids.
Thank you, Mr. Stavish.
Yeah, so I don't really have like a super strong opinion about that. I understand this is an election, and parties are designed to win elections. That's why they exist. The idea is that people want a shorthand in their mind that tells them something that's reliable, that they can quickly decide. Because I think most of us go into the voting booth and we see as many as 50 different names, and most of them we haven't heard of. And be honest, how many of you pull your phone out and Google them right there in the booth, and you're all like, I guess I'll pick that one. So it's not that big of a deal to me in that way. But in the other way, I feel like parties can certainly be derelict in their charter. Officially, they stand for something, but in practice, they start doing other stuff that we don't like. So that's kind of like a drop of poison is all it takes. That's the main ingredient in rat food in rat poison is rat food, and it's just the drop of poison that ends up killing it. So really what we're worried about is little drops of poison. That's what the transgenderism thing is all about, and that's what this partisan workings in our nonpartisan elections. We're worried about little drops of poison ruining the good thing we got going. I'm a conservative first, so that makes me usually align with Republican. I'm with Jimmy on this one. If you want to vote for me for that, cool. If you want to actually call me and talk about it, I'd love to hear from you.
Gentlemen, thank you both for all your responses. I hope our audience and our viewers tonight have received a better vision of your view moving into this election. With that, we're going to give you one more opportunity to close. You will each have 1 minute to do so. As we started with Mr. Stavish, we will end with Mr. McAndrew. Your closing statements, Mr. McAndrew, 1 minute.
Okay. You threw me off there. I have had the great fortune of living, working, playing, and serving this community for 20 years. Serving North Idaho for 40 years. Okay? I love it. I am here to preserve the North Idaho way of life and the opportunity for kids to have a great scholastic experience. Okay? It's going to be a hard job. Okay? It's going to take a lot of hard work. It's not easy, but it ought to be simple. Okay? Everything that comes across my table or across my desk or my email, first question is, are kids going to be better off academically because of my decision? Number two, how would their parents feel? And number three, are we stretching the dollars for the taxpayer? There's three things, right? That's if I can look at everything through those lenses, kids are going to win. You're going to be happy you voted for me. You will elect me this next year, and in 4 years, the proof will be in the pudding. I'd appreciate your vote. I promise I will serve you just like I've served thousands of families in this community, supporting them every step of the way. Nobody will work harder. Nobody will care more. And you will be proud of voting for Jimmy McAndrew, November 7th, Zone 2. Let's go.
Thank you, Mr. McAndrew. Mr. Stavish, your closing statement, 1 minute.
Thank you. First of all, thank you, Coeur Group, for putting this on. I understand the administrative effort in organizing something like this. It's very difficult. I'm in a similar industry. I organize events, and I actually produce the video tech for it too. So props to you guys as well. It's difficult work, and I'm very happy you guys are here doing this for us. It makes it easier, which makes it a little ironic because my main platform is trust and transparency, right? So we're making a big message so you can see everything that we're standing for. I'm mostly, on a personal level, is concerned about that drop of poison in the curriculum, or there's concerns about the mental health that might be used in dubious ways and those sorts of things. I just want to make sure we're all right. That's really all I'm doing. I'm a concerned father. I'm a concerned parent. I don't have any insider connections. I'm not a well-funded campaign. I don't have any endorsements. I'm just like you. Highly interested, and I want to be involved, and I want to make sure we're doing things right. So I want you to vote for Mike Stavish. Visit me on my website, mikestavish.com, and give me a call, email me, talk to me more about it. I'd love to hear from you.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Stavish. Gentlemen, thank you both for expressing your views tonight. Again, I hope our viewers have realized your position and what you'll be doing for our community if elected to Zone 2 271 trustee. Thank you both. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, welcome back to our forum tonight, provided by CDA TV and presented by the Coeur Group. In front of us, we have trustees for School District 271 and Zone 3. So, Matt Blatt and Heather Tinbrink. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes.
Thank you, Heather. Just wanted to make sure. We have formulated some questions for you. You'll each have an opportunity to answer each one of these questions. You'll have 1 minute and 30 seconds to do so. Although we will start with an opening statement at 1 minute. We will start with you, Mr. Blatt. 1 minute. Why are you here? Why are you running for School District 271 trustee?
Thank you for this opportunity. I'm Matt Blatt. I served in the military for a little over 28 years. I had the greatest job in the world. Got to tour the world. It culminated with some activities overseas where I worked with foreign ministers and foreign officials, rebuilding governments that had failed or were failing. After that, I ended up back at the Pentagon, where I was working on strategic analysis, strategic design, and advising to senior officials or senior military and government officials. Upon retiring, I promised my daughter, who was then, I think, 10, and she'd moved 8 times in her short life, that when we moved to Coeur d'Alene to grow closer to her family, that we would stop moving. So here's where I planted my flag, and here's why I plan on staying. Once I was here, I started trying to look around at what was going on in the neighborhood, started getting involved with the schools, and decided that there were some changes needed. And that kind of sums up where I'm coming from, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blatt. Mrs. or Miss?
Mrs.
Thank you. Mrs. Tinbrink, your 1 minute opening statement.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here tonight and to be able to speak to you. My name is Heather Tinbrink. I have been a member of the Coeur d'Alene Board of Trustees for the last almost 2 years. I was appointed to fill a vacancy at the end of 2021. Prior to that, I spent 15 years volunteering in the schools in our community, including 5 years as the president and then treasurer of the Skyway PTA. My husband and I moved here 19 years ago, and we have loved raising our kids here in Coeur d'Alene. I have 4 children. They've done their whole schooling careers in the Coeur d'Alene School District. 2 of them have graduated from Lake City High School. 2 of them are currently attending Lake City High School. And we've had really good experiences in the Coeur d'Alene School District. Our kids have had some great educational and extracurricular experiences, and I care about keeping those opportunities for all of our kids. So that's why I applied for a vacancy on the school board, and that's why I would like to be reelected for another 4-year term. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll now move on to our questions from our panelists.
Thank you both for being here tonight. Mrs. Tinbrink, we're going to start with you for this question. how did you vote for the levies in both votes, and why did you vote that way?
So I voted yes for the levies both times. I also voted yes to send both of those levies as a member of the school board. And so the primary reason, well, so the supplemental levy is 25% of our budget. So without the supplemental levy, we have to cut 25% of the things we do. And we have some really great programs in the Coeur d'Alene School District that serve our kids well. And it would be a real shame to cut many of those programs. In terms of the first time, it involved the perpetuity piece. And that obviously did not pass with our community. As a school board member, I felt it was worth trying, seeing how our community would react to it, because it's a lot of strain on the school district to every 2 years have the potential of losing 25% of our budget. A lot of time, a lot of stress is put on our teachers, whether their job will still be there after the levy election. So I felt it was worth a try. Our community didn't want it, and that's fine. We've done it every 2 years since the 80s, and we can continue to do it every 2 years. And this is part of the process, figuring out, sending things to voters giving you their feedback, and then you make a shift. So the second time we got rid of perpetuity, and obviously that passed, and I was super grateful to our community for continuing to support our school district in that way.
Thank you. Mr. Blatt.
So the levy itself is kind of a misdirection. How people voted for it is irrelevant at this point. The reason people voted against it for the most part was because there's mismanagement and there's a lack of trust by the taxpayers here on the money that we give to the school district. The school district does not seem to prioritize its expenditures in tune with what the community expects. We have deferred maintenance that doesn't get addressed, and yet we end up focusing energies and efforts on things like expanding the Midtown Meeting Center. We have schools that don't have heating and air conditioning, and we end up making purchases or setting up contracts to hire a variety of personnel who have nothing to do with providing a better education for our children. So, summing it all up, yes, the levy is an issue. Half of our community voted for it, half voted against it. But 100% of our community is upset that they can't trust the administration and the school board to be good stewards of the taxpayer money.
Mr. Blatt, the beginning of the question was how you voted for the levy. Are you willing to disclose that information at this time, or is that a no?
I think how people vote is private. What I do think is not private is our disgust or our frustration with how our money is being spent once we do vote for something.
Thank you for sharing your opinion.
All right. And Mr. Blatt, we're going to stay with you. With the amount of disinformation and inaccurate information that was passed around during the previous levy, how could you, in a trustee position, be more transparent with financial information to keep the community informed with the correct information about what the levy is going to represent for them?
So there's actually two parts to that. That's a very good question. The first part is the school district and the board are supposed to be limited on how they communicate with the public on things related to elections or referendums. There is Idaho statute that prohibits the expenditure of taxpayer money campaigning on behalf of any political event. And yet the school district felt it was okay to spend money campaigning and got into public arguments and disputes. So the answer to the question is the school district and the board should provide accurate information on a one-time basis as they put out the issue that's going up for a vote, and let the political parties and various pundits argue in the public sphere as they wish.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Tinbrink.
So I do think there was some misunderstanding of our local levy in this last election. And the trick about the every 2 years is it's every 2 years. And that can be frustrating for voters and taxpayers as well. The previous one is expired. We're starting a new one to replace the previous one that's expired. But every 2 years is a short cycle. So one of the things I would like to do, and that the school district has started to work on, We have approved a plan called the Smarter School Spending Plan. This is to help us look at our budget and evaluate, are we spending money on things that are our priorities? Our priority is student achievement. So is the way that we're spending our money reflecting that our priority is student achievement? This is a program that will be starting in the next month or two. It's a couple-year process, and I'm excited to see how that goes. Another thing I think would be good is for us to just be able, our budget information is all there on the website. It's completely transparent. It is not very easy to understand much of the time. So our financial officer has started creating something she's calling a budget book. And the goal with this budget book is to make our budget easier to understand for people who are not experts in schools finance. So I hope to see that continue to evolve, and we'll encourage her to make that easier for our public to access.
Thank you. Mrs. Tenbrink, I know that you've been in the position. How have you seen, or what do you see as your role or your continued role if elected to the school board?
So the primary thing I am focused on for the next 4 years is student achievement. We have recently passed a new strategic plan, and that's actually one of the things I'm real happy about that I was able to accomplish as a member of the board. In the strategic plan, we're focused on student achievement. Our former strategic plan was many hundred pages. It was not very focused, and it included things like the equity framework that our community didn't support. So we no longer have that plan. We have a new plan, and it's very focused on student achievement. And if you go to the Coeur d'Alene District website and go under What's New and click on Strategic Plan, you can actually check out that plan and the goals that are associated with it. And I would encourage you to do that. I am super excited about working this new strategic plan. And I do think we'll see an increase in student achievement. We've set a goal for this school year to have a 5% increase in student achievement. So as we work through this plan, I think we'll see a lot of dividends there. Another thing I'm excited about is just communicating better with the public. We've also directed administration to create an enhanced, a different communication plan, and I'm excited to see how we can communicate better with people in our community.
Mr. Blatt, what do you see as your role if elected?
So I've said it before in other forums, the board gives all the appearances of being a rudderless ship just drifting around the lake. There's a lack of leadership, and they tend to run from project to project or crisis to crisis without any long-term objective. My previous line of work, if you wanted to see something languish, you ran a study or you came up with a new plan. But the problems are pretty clear and straightforward. There's no priority of work. So we spend money and put effort into things which are not part of student achievement. They're not going into the curriculum. And year after year, we see our children failing. So as a board member, need to work together with a team, because there are 5 of us. And as a team, we need to start setting direction and guidance for the superintendent and the administration so that we can have some tangible outcomes in a near time frame.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Blatt, we're going to stay with you. Last year, the school board accepted a district-wide K through 5th grade English and language arts curriculum. Before that, each school has its own choice of what curriculum they wanted to put forward. Do you believe that we're moving forward in a better way, going with the unified curriculum, or do you believe that each school should be able to set their own?
Absolutely, it's great that we finally have a curriculum. I actually participated on the selection committee. It's pretty frightening, some of the programs that are out there. We picked the least bad of the lot. The interesting thing about having a curriculum is it's coherent and consistent. So starting from K all the way through 6, each child leaves a class theoretically at the same level or with the same expectations going to a new teacher. That helps, or that will help, with improving the outcomes of these kids, because now they're more on an equal playing field as far as what they've been offered. The problem that we have is it's incomplete. In order to pass muster, they had to remove a lot of objectionable materials, things like the UN Charter of Human Rights, and a variety of other materials. What's more concerning is there's always, even with this program, an effort towards social activism and teaching our kids to be social justice warriors. There's several texts in there that we objected to, but are still in there. It also includes social emotional learning, which a board member objected to and yet was overridden by the other board members. It easily could have been removed, but then there was a rush to buy the books before we could have them removed from the curriculum.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Tenbrink.
I'm thrilled that we have a district-wide curriculum for our elementary ELA levels. We have not had that for many years. And our teachers do a great job. They're professionals. They know how to teach our kids, and they work really hard at it. But it has led to inconsistent teaching. And with a district-wide curriculum, each classroom should be learning the same things at the same time. So for instance, I went and visited several classrooms in Skyway in preparation for thinking about adopting this curriculum. And I went into 2 classrooms and they were learning the CH sound. I went into a separate classroom and they were learning the SH sound. And it made it so that the teachers and the students weren't able to cross with each other, to interact with each other as they learned their sounds in this first grade classrooms. So this should really, really help with that. We've also started a program a few years ago called Orton Gillingham that's very specifically focused on phonics instruction. And that is something we learned that our kids really need, is very specific phonics instruction. So I'm excited to see that move through our system to kids who've had this instruction.
Okay, thank you very much. Mrs. Tenbrink, recently a bill that would cover up to $12 million in private school tuition for Idaho children passed the state Senate. Do you support the state providing grants for children to attend private school? Why or why not?
I think that everyone should have the ability to choose a school for their kid. And I think in Idaho we're actually blessed already with a wide variety of choices. There was also a bill this session that passed that made it so you can send your kid to any public school you want. You don't have to live in the district. And we have an extensive network of charter schools serving kids with different interests and different needs. And I think those are all really good things. And I think parents should have the choice to homeschool and to private school their kids. We are using local funds for 25% of our operating budget. So I have some concerns about inadequate state funding that currently exists and the impact that has on our school if it is further siphoned off. As a member of the Board of Trustees for the Coeur d'Alene School District, my job is to make our public school system the best it can be and make it somewhere parents want to send their kids and that their kids get what they need and can succeed.
Thank you. Mr. Black?
So isn't it interesting that we can have a charter school which receives less in support, financial support, than our own school district, and yet they still manage to turn a profit? It's rather alarming. So we need to have some competition. We need to figure out where we can lean up what we have in this school system, because if we're getting more per child, we should be able to produce children that are performing better than any of the charter schools here. It's not sufficient enough to have that bill either. For the folks that have been homeschooling, they pay taxes and they don't get a rebate or a kickback on their taxes for schooling their kids at home. So frankly, that needs to be expanded as well.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And this will be our last question. We'll start with you, Mr. Blatt. Should Coeur d'Alene schools enact a policy prohibiting the discussion or teaching of gender identity, sexual orientation, transgender identity, and gender expression like the Napa School Board recently passed?
We've entered an interesting period of time. I find it remarkable that somehow we've come to a time and place where adults think it's okay to talk to somebody else's child about sex. It's absolutely inappropriate. It has no place in the schools. I don't even understand why we have to argue and fight back against these kinds of agendas. It's a very vocal and very small minority that is hijacking the conversation and causing us to divert interests from other more important things, which is like improving their education and academic outcome.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Tenbrick?
So we have no official curriculum or courses that include discussions of transgender or sexual identity. We do have sex education that is an opt-in in 7th grade, and then we also have it in 10th grade, and their parents are welcome to opt out. But it does not include extensive discussions of sexual orientation. It's an abstinence-based program. So I don't know if we need a policy to address something we don't have. But that's a discussion that we could have with our community. And certainly if you're experiencing lessons and curriculum and teachings from teachers, please let your administrator and also us know.
May I offer a rebuttal to that?
15 seconds, Mr. Blatt.
We have a Pride Club in the high school. We had Pride Week in the middle school. We have teachers inviting children to come by their classroom to get more Pride material. I don't know how much more clear it can be. We even started a ramp program at Canfield School, which an outfit is very blatantly in that. I had to stop there.
So we do have I believe it's a GSA club in the high school. So the state law and First Amendment rights are if we have any clubs, we have to allow all clubs. So we have a student club that is after school. It's not part of our curriculum or our school day.
Thank you. I hope our audience and our viewers tonight have heard your views, help them in their decision on the voting process coming up. To further that, we're going to give you each 1 minute for a closing statement. We will start with you, Mrs. Tenbrick.
Thank you. So my kids have had some really great experiences in the Coeur d'Alene School District, from cross country and math is cool when they were in elementary, to AP classes and business clubs and music programs and dual enrollment as they were in middle school and high school. My kids and all the kids in our community have had wonderful chances to learn and to grow as people. And I'm dedicated to making sure that our children continue to have access to those things. I also take seriously my duty to ensure that our district is well managed and fiscally responsible. I believe that our schools are most successful when our staff and our parents and our community all work together to solve our local issues. Our kids' futures are too important for us to be distracted by outside issues. My name is Heather Tenbrink. Please vote for me on November 7th as a vote for stability and the long-term success of the Coeur d'Alene School District. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Tenbrink. Mr. Blatt, closing statements.
Thank you. So a lot of parents, myself included, are very frustrated at the willful blindness of our current school board in addressing issues. It is time to make some changes. We need to get some fresh blood in and some fresh eyes, and we need to fight back against people who are bringing in agendas and family values which are in opposition with our own. So vote for me, Matt Blatt, and I'm the guy who will help you make changes.
Thank you, Mr. Blatt. Well, that concludes our session here. It's been a pleasure getting to know both of your views more. I hope our, again, viewers have been able to improve their judgment on their vote coming in November 7th. Again, our goal tonight was to foster a constructive, informative discussion. I believe we've done that tonight. Thank you both for being here and being a part of this conversation. I will conclude in saying that will be the end of our forum tonight, provided by CDA TV and the Coeur Group. Again, we appreciate all of you that are watching. We appreciate all of those that are here in attendance. And again, thank you to CDA TV for putting this on, and the Coeur Group members that came together to form these questions and this forum for you all tonight. We hope the best for our community. I know everyone here does, including myself. I hope all of us come to the booth on November 7th to vote. Thank you. Have a great evening.